Welcome to the stock report portion as we take a look at who helped their stock, who hurt their stock among the draft eligible prospects. So let's go ahead, get into this sucker with Jalen Catalon. We're starting with Friday night. He took on Kansas and had himself a game. Allowed no catches on 3 targets. Ended up with a big interception that went for 46 yards. It was a great return and had 4 tackles in the game. And I'm going to be straight up, man, with you guys. Jalen Catalon, I'm so glad to see him playing football again. Coming in at 5'11", 205. He was someone that I thought was a day two pick a few years ago. And what has really screwed Jalen Catalon was his body's ability to let him down. He has been so hurt, so banged up, and it's probably going to be the only reason he ends up not getting drafted. This dude's going to be in camp. Best believe it. He's that talented. He's got that type of range. But I don't think you can I don't know if you can really draft him with the injury concerns. I mean, I could see him getting drafted at the back end of day 3, just simply because you don't want to let this guy be a UDFA and having to compete for him as an undrafted free agent. Maybe you just take a flyer on him in the 6th, 7th round. But the injury concerns are legit, guys. You go back to his senior season in high school, he had an ACL injury. You go to his freshman season, he suffered a labrum tear, so we're talking 2 injuries. You go to his redshirt freshman year, he ends up having meniscus surgery, but he ends up playing through it. He had meniscus surgery prior to the season, plays after that, ends up being a first-team All-American, but we're talking about 3 injuries right there off the bat. He had his season cut short in 2021 because of a shoulder injury and a broken hand in 2022. He injured his shoulder in the season opener, ended up missing the season as he underwent reconstructive surgery in the offseason. So we got 6 injuries right there. And then he transfers from Arkansas to Texas in 2023. He played in 8 games with 4 starts, suffered a lower leg injury, but that one was a little less severe. But we're talking 7 injuries over the course of his career. This man's career has been derailed by injury. I don't know if you could take a shot on that, but what you're getting as a prospect is an explosive athlete with really good range. Someone who plays with that dog in him. He doesn't mind coming downhill and throwing caution to the wind and throwing his body around. You're playing with a guy, or you're getting a guy who has demonstrated, when healthy, a lot of ball skills throughout his career. Like, you go to that portion where he was probably his healthiest in his career, 2000 and 2001. He had 5 interceptions and 8 pass breakups. And on top of that, he is a good locker room guy. He is a natural-born leader. Dude truly is, especially from the sideline. I say especially from the sideline. When he was hurt, like, he didn't let injury get him down. He was someone who was able to, like, rally his teammates together and keep the energy up. But he is Mr. Glass, unfortunately. He is Mr. Glass, so kind of sucks. But I'm going to stick with this game here. I'm going to talk about actually his teammate, Jackson Woodard, out of UNLV. Had a good game against Kansas where he had 11 tackles, 3 defensive stops. He also had that 26-yard interception where Jalen Daniels just stared down his target, his first read, and basically all Woodard had to do was jump it. He was also a guy that was listed on Mel Kiper's top 10 inside linebackers. So I was like, I got to add him to the list. And then he ends up having the big game, the interception Friday night. So I was like, okay, let's go watch this guy. And I think I'm not as high on him as Mel is, apparently, because I assume Mel probably has him as an early day 3 pick. I have him more as like a mid to late day 3 pick. He comes in as 6'3", 230 pounds. And he's got a great story. The dude was a walk-on at Arkansas. He was a preferred walk-on, so he was someone Arkansas didn't offer a scholarship to, but did recruit and were like, hey, do you want to we want you to come in and try out. And he ends up making the team off of that. Redshirts his freshman season, but never was a starter at Arkansas. Played a lot of special teams his final year in 2022. But when the DC at the time, Barry Odin from Arkansas, decides to take the head coaching job at UNLV, he said, hey, no, Woodard is one of these guys that I need to bring to this UNLV program if we're going to, try to turn things around. So Woodard ends up transferring, following his DC, was an immediate starter in 2023, ended up being a first-team All-Mountain West, and this year's probably going to be, once again, a first-team All-Mountain West. Like, he's a very high character, high character. He's a leader. He's got that Captain C on the jersey. He's someone that has extensive community service work. And I mean, again, like you hear it not just from the coach and staff, but you hear it from his teammates. You talk about this guy's work ethic and his just how good of a person he is. So you're getting a very high character individual. Is pretty explosive downhill. Well, like, he'll come downhill with a big head of steam, and he wants to hit. He can hit like a brick. He has a bit of a blitzing upside, as he does a good job finding the quickest route to get to a ball carrier in the backfield or to the quarterback. I think last season he had 26 pressures, 3 sacks, so very nice. And also probably at his best in coverage in zone. He's got a good feel for zone. In terms of, like, I think he's a limited athlete. Like, he's not the fastest guy. He's not the smoothest mover. But if you get him in a zone-heavy scheme, I think you're going to be A-okay. Because he's someone that effectively, like, can read coverage, can read what's going on underneath, and make a play on it. So he's very much a minimal gain guy. Like, hey, you may catch it on me, but those 4 to 6 yards where deep that you're not going to get any yards after the catch. So that's pretty nice as well. I do think just him in pursuit, it's not always great. Like, sometimes he takes tight angles and it doesn't give him the cleanest tackles. Like, he does have a missed tackle rate that's a little higher than you would like. It's not in, like, dangerous territory, but it's not that impressive. So it's like, yeah, maybe taking better angles to be able to get cleaner hits on ball carriers. On top of that, he does struggle to disengage when he does get locked up by second level blockers, offensive linemen. Like, he's just typically out of the play at that point. So yeah, I think mid to late day 3 is probably a good call for there when it comes to Woodard. Did you know if you go to Underdog Fantasy and sign up with promo code BROSHMO, they will match your first deposit up to $250? You did? Well, I'm glad I told you, because Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play weekly best ball, or my favorite, higher or lower on player props, and they already got props out for week 3 of the NFL. So get in on the action with Underdog Fantasy. Go there, sign up using promo code BROSHMO, and of course, my friends, bet responsibly and bet within your means. Next on the list, we got ourselves RJ Harvey, running back out of Central Florida. Someone that got on my radar last draft season and ended up returning to the Golden Knights. And he's coming in at 5'9", 205. He has just been spectacular. You go back to last year where he had over 1,400 yards, 18 total touchdowns. He had 74 forced missed tackles. Just very impressive. Had a great game against TCU, by the way. And I think he's like in the top 3 of rushing yards and forced missed tackles currently. So yeah, no, he's having a good year, but popped off against TCU for over 180 yards. Had 2 rushing touchdowns on top of a receiving touchdown as well. His only catch of the game, I believe, ends up going for a 29-yard touchdown. But the dude, he at 5'9", he's got that lower build, lower stature, and he plays with good lower body strength. Always keeps his feet moving through contact. I'm a sucker for guys that just keep the feet churning through contact. I like it. I love it. So good stout lower body. Also quick feet. He's got good stop-start ability. Just good footwork. And it just allows him to be really shifty. He can literally make you miss. And plays with great vision. There is the him as a pass catcher. Hasn't really been utilized a ton this year just yet, but you did see it last year. So I do expect as the year goes on, Central Florida will tap into that. But he has been very fruitful when used in the passing game. He's a guy that can just create out in space. I do think he's a bit of a middle-in athlete for a smaller back. Like, he's quick, but don't think he has got elite speed. But we've seen that. We've seen Bucky Irvin. He ends up going in, I think, the 4th round. He ends up going into like I think it was either the 3rd or 4th round. I think it was 4th round. But Bucky Irvin ends up going. He didn't test out that well for being a smaller back, but you liked the play speed on the field. You liked the vision for the most part, and I think RJ Harvey could find himself in the same type of projection realm when it's all said and done. Again, he was someone that I watched last year that I expected to come out, didn't. But yeah, big fan of him. Do want to see maybe more reps in pass protection, but I feel like if you're using him as a pass protector, then you're really missing out on what he can do for you as a receiving option out of the backfield. So RJ Harvey, love that you're doing well. Next, I got Corey Kiner, running back out of Cincinnati. Took on the Miami Redhawks this past week. Ends up going for 126 yards and a tutty. Coming in at 5'9", 210 pounds. And he's a good hard-nosed runner. He really is. He's got that nice, nice at 5'9", you got a lower stature. So you're able to get under a lot of defenders' pads. Another guy that just keeps the feet moving with a good stout enough lower half. He does a good job of just keeping low to the ground. Like, he's got that low center of gravity. Good vision, good quick. So he's very similar to RJ Harvey in a lot of regards. And that's kind of why I bring him up here. Because the one thing that I think the one thing that separates Harvey from Kiner is their utilization in the passing game and how dynamic of a ball carrier that they are. So Harvey, way more dynamic, way more utilized as a receiving option. When it comes to Kiner, like, legit, he's never used in the passing when he is, those options, those chances, those opportunities are few and far between. But when they do get him in there as like a pass blocker, I think he's gritty. He's willing to, like, okay, I'm about to get ran over, but at least I could be a roadblock for my quarterback. So, like, he's a willing pass protector, but again, not utilized a ton in the run game or in the passing game. When it comes to him as a ball carrier, he's just not that dynamic. I talked about RJ Harvey uses that quick footwork and shiftiness to make guys miss. Kind of just lowers the shoulder. There's really no make you miss ability there on tape. It's just like, oh no, I can run through these guys. These guys. It is what it is. I got it. So, like, Kiner and Harvey, very similar in terms of size and athleticism. It's just what they do with it that kind of separates them. And that's not to knock, like, Kiner too much. Like, I think he can be a draftable prospect He had a solid year last year with Cincinnati, and he's on his way to having a really good year this year once again for Cincinnati. He is a guy with a pedigree. He's a former 4-star recruit who went to LSU, and after a year, and he was actually very utilized in the rotation his freshman season, but ended up wanting to move closer to home as he's from Cincinnati. So kind of another guy to keep an eye on in this stacked running back class. Truly, truly is. Everybody loves the NFL draft, and I know you want to be familiar with every potential prospect that your team may draft. So I got good news for you. My draft guide is available for purchase. It is good throughout the entire draft cycle, and it updates through the season regularly. You'll get my current evals and rankings on hundreds of different players with player backgrounds and analytics. It also contains combine and pro day numbers, as well as my notes from the Senior and Shrine Bowl. You can purchase it for a one-time payment of $30 on PayPal, Venmo, and now I have the Cash App. Follow the link in the description and be sure to include your email because it is a Google spreadsheet. That is how I share it with you. So please don't make me hunt down your email. Just don't do it. Anywho, it's a great purchase and it's a great way to support the channel. Next on the list is Will Campbell, left tackle out of LSU, took on South Carolina and took on Kyle Kennard, took on Dylan Stewart. But he comes in at 6'6", 320 pounds, gave up 2 pressures on 47 pass blocking snaps. And if you watch the game, I know PFF had Will Campbell with the lowest pass blocking grade among the offensive line for LSU. That's because he took on Dylan Stewart most of the time in a hell of a matchup. Like, these are 2 top 10 prospects, and Dylan Stewart's only a freshman, true freshman, I think. So he's going to be a top 10 pick down the line. And he was a guy that was just blowing up like people's X feed because it was like, oh my gosh, this cat might be a top 10 pick right now. Look at what he's doing. And I thought Will Campbell stepped in and was like a good litmus test for Dylan Stewart and where he could get better in some regards. But that's not to say Will Campbell was perfect. He certainly wasn't. There were times where it was like Dylan Stewart was too much to handle and too quick, and Will Campbell was unable to put complete contact on him, was unable to get his hands on him in any meaningful way, as Dylan Stewart's got this nice little ghost move where he then hits him with the dip, and it was good. And I mean, for me, Will Campbell, like, I thought hand utilage was something he needed to work on this year. So Dylan Stewart, he ends up winning in terms of, okay, Will Campbell, hand utilage, not exactly like the most active hands. Let's take advantage of that. Let's just be too quick for him to be able to even put a hand on. Okay, cool. Give you the win there. There's another rep in this game where I believe it's LSU creates a moving pocket with play action. And I think Nussmeier rolls out a little, maybe not. I think he does roll out a little bit. And Dylan Stewart tries to take him on, I think, with a bull rush. And Will Campbell does a good job of locking him up at the point of attack. Dylan Stewart, since it's a little rollout to his side, tries to get up to, I think, deflect the pass. And freaking Will Campbell was just like, oh, that was a mistake, and puts him right on his butt. Freaking disgusting. So Will Campbell might come out of this game with the lowest passing grade of the rest of the offensive line for LSU. Will Campbell by far had the toughest time having to take on Dylan Stewart a majority of the time. And I thought looked good. There were some losses. For the most part, I thought Will Campbell had a lot of wins and looked good. He looked every part of being a top 10 pick. And deserves to be talked about as such. He is definitely that. For me, he's the 1B to Kelvin Banks being the 1A. Some people kind of have that flip-flopped, and I think that's fine. They're both really good prospects. All right. Next on the list, Earnest Greene III, left tackle out of Georgia. He didn't play good, guys. He didn't play good. Coming in at 6'4", 320 pounds. He ended up allowing 4 pressures on 23 pass blocking snaps. And it felt like it was so much so, like where he was, I think he ends up getting benched. I can't recall if he gets banged up. I think he gets benched because he played bad. He played bad. He's a guard in the NFL. He's a guard in the NFL. Listen, I still like Earnest Greene as a prospect, but this dude's a guard in the NFL. Absolutely. Listen, he's strong. He plays with good quicks. Has a bit of that fire hydrant. Just once he plants his feet in the ground, he is stout. But he is a bit I said this earlier in the year. He's a bit Jekyll and Hyde in some regards, man. It just feels like he doesn't always play with the killer instinct. He doesn't always I think it's really just maybe it could be a football IQ thing with him, but the hand usage isn't there yet with him. The coordination's not there with him, and that was apparent this week. So Earnest Greene, I think I came into the year with a 3rd round grade on him. Probably bump that down to maybe an early to midday 3 grade. We'll see. I'll probably make that decision if he's a starter against Bama and see how he does against Bama. But yeah, I'm pretty sold on him being a guard now in the NFL. I'll eventually make that adjustment in my draft guide for you guys that have it. Next is Jalon Walker. We're sticking with this game. He had a monster game against Kentucky as a pass rusher. Had 8 pressures, 2 defensive stops, had a batted pass, a 22.2% pass rush win rate, and he's emerged as a first-round edge player in this class. 6'2", 245. He can drop back into coverage. Now, I'm not saying he could do a lot of I'm not saying he's anything more than a spot dropper. Like, maybe you just drop him in a hook zone. Or you can honestly man him up, I think, on like a running back and whatnot. Even maybe the tight end. But what he's been doing as a pass rusher has been utterly ludicrous. He is picked up from Mikael Williams being out. And honestly, if you go back to last year's tape, he looked like the better pass rusher compared to Mikael Williams. So, he's going to be a big riser on my board. I entered the year with him as a 2nd round grade. I think he's going to the 1st round. The big thing for me with him was the sample size was small and he hadn't played a lot of football yet. And I just didn't really know what he was going to end up being. Is he going to be more off-ball linebacker or more edge player? That question's kind of been answered early in the season. He is definitely more of a edge player who can drop back into coverage. It does need to get stronger. 245 can be a little light in the pants. You want him to get better in that regard as a run defender, but he does play with that dog in him. And I just don't want to see him washed out of the run game when it comes to the NFL level, just because it's stronger, it's more physical. But I'm a big fan of Jalon Walker. He's going to be a big riser when I release my mid-season rankings. All right, next I got Bradyn Swinson, edge out of LSU. We're going back to the LSU South Carolina game. Coming in at 6'4", 250 pounds. And I think reminded people of how good he is. I feel like he gets lost in this. He entered the year with a 5th round grade from me, but it definitely felt like he kind of got people forgot about him after. If you go back to 2021, he had made his first start against Ohio State when he was playing for Oregon, and had himself a hell of a good ball game. But during that game, ends up tearing his MCL. From there, he just becomes a rotation player the following season. He ends up transferring to LSU, where he ends up not being a starter for most of the year, but he's used a lot in the rotation. And he was good last year. Like, you look at the win rate from him, 15.9% in 2023. A true pass rush win rate, which basically just takes all influence from the run game out. And it's 25.6. That's in the upper percentile. And now that he's the full-fledged starter, he's getting the snaps that he deserves. This game, 7 pressures, 3 sacks, 3 defensive stops, which if you're unfamiliar with that statistic, it's just a stop resulting in either a loss or no gain. Had 3 of those. Had a 40% pass rush win rate. He was utterly ridiculous. Ridiculous in that regard. Freaking love it. And I love that now he's getting some, at least I hope he gets some shine on him. Because he's got the length. He's got the flexibility. The hand usage is really good. He has been a spot dropper at times in his career, more so at Oregon. But still, he's been a spot dropper at times. And he's just improved immensely the last couple of seasons. Now, I'm glad that he's getting the chance to be the guy. That was kind of a con I had with him, was like, man, he's just never been the guy wherever he was. And now he's getting that opportunity. The run defense does need to get better, and I think if he's going to make himself a day 2 prospect, that area needs to get cleaned up. And I think part of that has to do with just maybe adding a little more play strength potentially, because there are times where he gets out physicaled. And I mean, keep in mind, I think he's going to probably be like a older prospect, like 23, going into his rookie year. But I love what he's been doing as a pass rusher, and I love that he's getting that opportunity to shine. All right, let's talk about a little Travis Hunter, wide receiver / corner, though I'm starting to consider him more of a wide receiver just because, hey, that's who gets the most money in the NFL. But he had a really good game against Colorado State. Kind of a revenge game. That was the game that injured him last season. But coming in at 6'1", 185, ended up going 13 receptions for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had an interception in that game that he returned. I believe that ended up putting Colorado in the red zone because it was in Colorado State territory. He did allow, I think he allowed 6 receptions on 8 targets for 54 yards. So that is something also you want to note. But to be fair, when it comes to this defense, he plays a lot of man. He's typically covering the best player of the opposition, and in this case, that would have been Torrey Horton in this game. But he's a top 10, top 5 prospect in this class. He's going to be someone that this is where I project him to be. I think he's going to be a wide receiver primarily, and there will be some packages for him defensively. I don't think there ain't no way he's playing 120, 130 snaps a game in the NFL. I'm sorry, that's just not believable. That's just not believable. The NFL's too physical, and it's just not going to end well for him if that's the case. I think you could play him maybe 10 snaps defensively a game, but I do think wide receiver is probably where he ends up going. And I'm honestly a little more 50-50 on, is he a better wide receiver prospect than he is corner? I'm kind of 50-50 on that, so I'm not 100%. But definitely a special talent. You love the quicks. He's shown really good recognition. I think he's a better zone corner than man corner. Just as a man corner, he's got the thin frame where he could get beat around, but he shows he shows a good understanding, him being a receiver, shows a good understanding for route recognition and route concepts, able to identify, say he's out on the perimeter and teams are trying to throw a high-low concept on him. He knows the proper depth to take, where he can maybe make an impact both downhill and maybe having to get upfield to make a play on the ball. I think he He just has that type of recognition. But you also take those quicks as a ball carrier and like as a receiver. And he's not like he's the most nuanced route runner. He's still learning. He still needs to be a bit more polished in that regard. But he is just such a ridiculously quick athlete that he can go out there and out athlete people, get open, and then take it to the house. Like really good acceleration on his part. Like really, really good. Now, when it came to him as a corner in this Colorado State game, it wasn't necessarily like just Torrey Hunter, but you also had other receivers that were able to get, I don't want to say underneath, but where they were able to stack him and put him in trail position, and that gave enough room for maybe a good intermediate gain as long as the quarterback put it on the money. There were a couple of instances of that, but like, I mean, I'm kind of nitpicking on a guy who, like, how many snaps did he end up playing this game? So he ends up playing 64 on defense, and then you go to the offense, he ends up playing, where are you at? 59. So he ends up playing 120 snaps in this game. That's just freaking ridiculous. Stinking ridiculous. Last person I want to talk about, just because I want to talk about the injury, I kind of highlighted it a little bit earlier. Quinn Ewers ends up having an abdominal injury, and I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be frank. Like, I'm not too worried about it. I'm just not. It sounds like it's not severe. He will miss the game against Louisiana Monroe. So kind of is what it is in that regard. But I don't know if you bring him back against Mississippi State, because they're a bad team. You could probably rely Archie to do that. Just like rest up and get ready for the tough games that lay ahead in the schedule. But it's good to see that he will be back. But now this begs the question when it comes to Quinn Ewers. This is a cat that's missed a couple of games almost every year, right? Like, let's take a look at this. Like, this is a guy that's missing like a game or two every year. I'm just pulling up his bio right now just to confirm. All right. Yeah. Okay, so 2023, he missed a game because of an injury to his throwing shoulder. 2022, he missed 3 games after suffering a clavicle sprain in his non-throwing shoulder. And I put a little red flag here for the injury, for shoulder injuries. While none of the injuries have been serious, they were on his shoulders, and that's worth noting. This is an abdominal injury, but it's like, okay, now he has missed at least a game the last 3 years, 1 game per year. Granted, 3 games in 2022. Is that going to be a concern in the NFL? You're sub 200. That's not ideal. Typically, you want your quarterback 10, at least 210, please. You gotta get up to 15 pounds. So, yeah, I think that's probably the bigger question here when it comes to Quinn Ewers. Are you gonna miss games every year? Because what do they say in the NFL? Availability is the best ability you can have. In that game against UTSA, he did have an interception, did have a fumble. But he went 14-16 for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's still playing really good football. I'm not worried about it. But now the injuries are a little more concerning. While they never are severe, are you gonna be the Terrion Armstead of quarterbacks, where you're just missing a game every year? I think that's a fair question. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Who are some of the guys that maybe overwhelmed or underwhelmed you this past week in college football, go ahead and just let me know in the comments section. If you want more draft content, I got it on the channel. Go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to have a mock draft out later today, so be on the look for that. But before I head out, I do want to give a shout out to some of the people in the chat because I always love your support, and just thank you for it. We had Walt talking Archie Manning is the truth. Got Izzy. How you doing, Izzy? Said the first time I said the Boston College quarterback's name, it was correct. I'll get it down eventually. It is what it is. We got Teflon John. He was asking what happened to the Texas quarterback. Abdominal injury. Doesn't look severe. Nintendo Mike. He's happy about his Illini. Well, I'm happy for you, buddy. Vigilante. Chances of Broncos drafting Travis Hunter. I mean, considering the Broncos will probably be in the top 5, probably you can throw probably say there's like a 20% chance, 15, 20%. But thank you for joining me today. We will be back tomorrow talking about the NFL, going it game by game, and as well doing our new power rankings. Ooh, so be there for that tomorrow morning. Brandon just entered the chat. Got to give him a shout out. After these first 2 games, I don't know who I want the Texans to draft now. That's fair. That's fair. But thanks again, as always. And as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.